Hey guys, my name is Jennifer Corriero. I'm co-founder and executive director of Taking It Global, and today I am excited to share with you 8 key themes that came out of my recent experience attending South by Southwest EDU, as well as the Digital Media and Learning Conference. So I was in Austin and then Boston and had some pretty interesting insights in the whole area of educational technology. The first insight is all around the playground experience that I had. I entered a room that was filled with these round tables, and on the tables there was a canvas, a white table with a bucket of crayons. And I just loved the setting of the room because people were writing different things, and we had workshop facilitators. So I attended a session by Andrea Keller, and she ran a session where she talked about using GBL or game-based learning in her classroom. And in her experience, it was actually not so digital. She had this sort of game board, and she gave us little packages, an envelope with a mission, and we had to then use different digital tools to earn the ability to understand what our next mission was. And then she also talked about how she uses these game boards in the class to help students progress at their own pace in terms of learning and documenting their learning in the form of a game. We were surrounded by lots of organizations that use different tools and, for example, these little profiles of people to create a sense of empathy, or organizations like Brain Pop, giving out this calendar, and another group, Venture Lab, they have stickers. Love this little sticker. A whole bunch that you could collect, but these stickers represent different types of people that they're teaching entrepreneurship to through camps or after school programs. And given the work that we do at Taking It Global with Sprout and our social innovation program, which is an online course, I was very interested to learn a little bit more about some of the other organizations that are working on teaching entrepreneurship through play and through this idea of being in a game. So the playground was my first theme. The second relates to student voice, and Zach Malamed, who runs this initiative called Student Voice, brought together a group of about 6 students, and they shared their experience with their campaign. And what stood out to me was 2 things. One, just the fact that they were dispersed and sitting at these different tables with experts in education and talking about how do you give space for student voice in your classroom. And at Taking It Global, we have a course, a professional learning course for teachers on student voice specifically. And so for me, I was just optimistic. In the founding, in the early days of Taking It Global, we've always been very active in promoting the importance and the significance of engaging student voice in decisions, not just in the classroom, but within the school, and looking more broadly as we try to define the future of education. And so for me to see that instance of students who are very actively engaging in these discussions with teachers, it just brought me a real sense of joy. And on the fun theme of entrepreneurship, which is the third big trend that stood out, is how many organizations, how many companies are starting up in the whole EdTech space. And there were pitch sessions in an entrepreneurialism in education sort of track. So different companies were pitching their ideas, and then we heard feedback on these different ideas. And the big takeaway for me in those sessions was the advice offered by one of the panelists, one of the jury members, that said those organizations and companies that have teachers on either their board of advisors or on their staff or as consultants, but are working closely with them to design and deliver whatever educational product or service that they have to offer, those are the ones to invest in. And it just made me smile to think about the pilot project that we're working on with the Toronto District School Board, and how in the second phase of rolling it out, we actually had the alumni of our first pilot working with us as partners and co-facilitators to roll it out. And so I definitely agreed with that advice. All right, so this is a side note. It kind of relates to both student voice and entrepreneurialism. It's a book that I found in the bookstore called The Global Game Changers. A lot of people use this term, game changers. How is your idea going to be a game changer? And I thought it was a fun little book to bring back, to my little guy, and also to the students that we work with. And it's very inspiring to just hear the story of these 2 people who want to change the world, and then how their friends get involved on these different quests to end homelessness, as an example. And it just gave me a bit of optimism to see how our literature, like the literature of our time, is profiling these stories of students who are changing the world. So now we're going to move on to the 4th theme, which is efficacy. So I went to the Pearson Lounge, and as a huge international company, Pearson Education has been leading a sort of conversation about this idea of efficacy. And they've created some reports that they launched and shared, and they also have this online tool. And so I had a chance to sit with a few different people, Vaitheki as one of the members of the Efficacy team at Pearson, and she talked to me a little bit about how the conversation around outcomes has been a really transformative tool within the company itself, and then they're sharing their methodology through this online tool, which is, you can find it at efficacy.pearson.com, to learn a little bit more about how this is a catalyst for transformational change in our education systems. So whether you be working in the classroom or outside the classroom, if you're interested in this talk, I really see that the practice they've had at Pearson is starting to extend beyond their own company and is possibly a tool for transformation in the world. So I thought that was an interesting announcement and area of focus over recent months by Pearson. All right, fifth. So this concept of crowd teaching. So I heard from Tyler DeWitt, and he presented, he had a short sort of stint talking about this concept of crowd teaching, a grassroots movement of teachers who engage with each other in creative collaboration to create curriculum. And he really sees this as a future trend, and I thought it was an interesting idea that teachers are not just accessing lots of content, but actually working together to create curriculum and lesson plans. And I see this as part of the seeds of what we've been trying to sow through our work with TIG Ed and our online activities database and collaboration. But it's one thing to conceptualize it. He really sees that it's starting to happen and grow, and I hope that it does. So the fifth, actually no, that was fifth. The sixth is this whole maker movement. On the maker movement, there was a really fun session hosted by Adobe where they used these props of the letters of the alphabet. They had different shapes and sizes and textures, and we could have a blank sheet of paper and create words and photograph it, and then with these photos they could be posted. What I really liked is how that spoke to this idea of everyone growing their sense of creative confidence, everyone accessing their sense of creativity, and them really focusing on technology as having the ability to really unleash our creativity, but not abandoning the importance of tactile things that we can touch and work with and make things with. And I saw that theme of the maker movement also present at the Digital Media and Learning Conference, DML, this year, 2014, where the Intel Computer Clubhouse Network, as an example, have been really growing momentum from having one clubhouse back in, let's say, 99. Now they have so many in different parts of the world where they're creating these active spaces for people to make things with their hands, and they're also transforming and being a catalyst for transforming, let's say, libraries as well. And so we want to make sure that we are actively nurturing those spaces for young people to really be creative, whether that be inside the classroom or after school. And so that gives me hope, because I'm someone who likes to make things, and I think that that's also something where we intentionally focus on what are the spaces that we've designed for that maker movement in all of us to blossom. All right, so the seventh idea that really stood out to me was this whole concept of personalization and badging, and they could be seen as really separate, but there was a lot of talk around big data and the role of all this data. Now we're in a world filled with data, and how the insights that we can get from it can help to deliver more personalized experiences. And I think we're just at the beginning of understanding what's really possible. On the tone of badges, I met someone from Ann Arbor Skyline High School at the DML conference who talked to me a little bit about the Student Action Center. And she had a group of students come up with the possible badges that they might be able to earn, and they mapped out like this whole system. And it sort of talks about this question of how do we recognize and honor learning that takes place both inside and outside of the classroom. And I think this whole concept of badges, it hasn't really taken off, I think, the way that we hope, but I see huge potential in it. We started delivering badges on the TIG Web platform a few years ago, and as a instructor for the HP Catalyst Academy, a mini course that I launched last year, there's badges that people can earn, and you see that while a badge may be an incentive for people, it may not quite be enough of an incentive for people who are interested in a learning experience to follow through with it completely. So while it hasn't had like massive take up, I still think that there's a lot of potential, and I was very interested in these discussions related to badging, and also how those who would be eligible to earn that badges are actively involved in a process to design them. that initiative was funded by the MacArthur Foundation, so excited to see where that has to go. And the final theme that I wanted to share in this blog, thanks for sticking with me to the end, is this whole idea of social spaces, and not just the digital, but how that affects the in-person spaces. So I will show you a photo from the social media lounge at South by Southwest, where we got to stand in front of this like photo booth, get a picture of ourselves, and then it printed a copy that I could take home, and then a copy that we posted up on this bulletin board with our Twitter handle, and to be able to find interesting people. And so it was a way to connect with each other in this physical space. They had popcorn, they had these lovely lounge chairs, it was a green room, felt like I was out in the park, except that I was inside a conference center, and just the whole environment was really lending itself towards informally socializing with people, but also helping to make those connections online. And so when it comes to conferences and when it comes to education and learning, it makes me ask the question of how do we continue to intentionally design these spaces for interaction? On the theme of interaction, we had a lot of fun during the Canada Party that was co-hosted with Mars and organizations like Mindshare Learning, who we love, and we actually featured our Future Friendly Schools initiative as part of a really interactive booth experience where people could come along and write a message about their vision for Future Friendly School on a little chalkboard and get their photo taken for our Instagram account. So thanks for listening, and if you are curious to follow additional conversations on education, you can follow our channel at Taking It Global.